Hello, everyone. Welcome to our lunchtime live stream. This has been much anticipated for me, Jack Fox. If you guys don't know, I am with Jack Fox of Never a Truer Word. He is an incredible statement analysis expert in deception. Hi, Jack.
Hey, how are you, Lauren? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I have been immersed in Menendez world as of pretty recently. I want to say I started getting interested in this case a bit more in 2023 when a member of Menudo came out, Roy Rossello, and said that he was also assaulted by Jose Menendez. That really resonated with me, and I remember seeing the habeas petition that was filed in 2023 by Cliff Gardner and Mark Garagos on behalf of the brothers because of one, this evidence, Roy Rossello coming forward, which is a pattern, I guess you could say, and then a note that this note was written by Erik Menendez to his cousin Andy Cano about a few months before the murders in 1989. This note was found in 2010 by Andy's mother, Marta. Andy had sadly already passed away from a drug overdose in 2003. But this note, and we will get into this note and what it says, they also believe that this is more evidence that should grant maybe an appeal, maybe a new trial, maybe a release, based on the fact that it could have been manslaughter. So we've got a lot to unpack statement wise, but I just want to say one more thing because I am under the impression that I believe them based on their testimony, based on the corroborating stories of witnesses, family members, also the doctors that treated him. Dr. Ann Burgess, for example, on the stand, she was incredible in saying, everything that she experienced in dealing with Lyle and treating him. And I also believe in 30 years, Jack, I mean, how would it not come out that they've been lying about this the entire time? I feel like something would have been said. But anyway, that's my spiel before we get started. So you tell me, where do you think we should start? So should we go backwards or should we go from the beginning?
Well, I'm not. We can start where you want because it's
Okay.
your gig. I would only say that this is so complex. So you have deep dived into this.
Yes.
It was never that big a story here in the UK. So, and I like that because I like to go into things not knowing, not having any biases, or you said there's so much evidence, so many people have come forward, and I don't know any of that, so I can just judge the words that are there. But even when I do that, man, it is complex. And you hooked me in. You sent me some stuff, and I went, I haven't seen enough now. I'm going to have to see more. The other thing is, I think I very rarely publicly analyze the words of people who are claiming that they've suffered from abuse, because I don't see very often what good it brings to the world if I say I believe this person or I don't believe this person. That person is telling their story for a reason, and I don't do that very often. And another reason is that abuse survivors, sometimes their words fly in the face of what I normally do in terms of looking at deception. So we'll see this. I think we'll see this in that note you mentioned. Abuse survivors will very often soften what happened. They won't talk about it in very graphic detail. They will talk about it in a very distant fashion. Now, normally that's an indicator that is deception happening here. They're not really committed to this story. But with abuse survivors and the trauma they've experienced, then there is a reason for them to do that. Abuse survivors typically have a lack of confidence within themselves. And again, that can cause them to hold things back. And again, we might pick up linguistically that they are hiding things, and they may well be hiding things, but it's not out of maliciousness. It's out of the fact that they want to keep these things personal. There may be an element of denial in abuse survivors as well. So again, we may feel that they're hiding things because they really don't want to come out and talk about some of the horrible things they've experienced. And again, we might see linguistic markers of hiding things.
Nailed it. I think you just nailed it right there, Jack. And if you didn't know, and maybe you do, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
that's all right.
This was hidden for a long time. Mainly Lyle, I would say, was the one that's like don't tell anyone. Don't, even when they were arrested, he was slipping notes in Erik's jail cell being like, don't bring up the abuse. It's shameful. So I think a lot of that might sort of come out in these notes and in these letters, right? Like, I want to tell you everything, but I'm being a little, standoffish about it because it's shameful. And who can talk about what their dad, like, it's just, who can talk about that openly? And I mean, I have a hard time talking about it, and it didn't happen to me, and I
Yeah.
can't even say it. So it's so strange. But everybody in the chat, sorry, is saying thank you for saying that, Jack. Hi, Charlotte. Yeah, hi, Afton. Hi, Taryn. I'm trying to say hi to everyone. Hi, Forrest. Hello, defense attorney Meow. Sheila, Sue. Okay, Sal. So Dark Side of the Moon. But Jack, you know what we should start with? Let's just start. I would say let's start from the 80s. Let's go in chronological order. 1989, maybe the letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the letter here.
Okay.
And what I noticed in this overall is a really negative disposition. So he is talking a lot about what he can't do or doesn't want to do. So he says a lot, I can't. He says a lot, I just don't know, and I can't explain it. So without, it's not someone trying to overly persuade us. It's not I really can't or I completely can't, I totally can't. It's just very straightforward. I can't, I just don't know what to do. I can't explain it. So it's written by someone with a really negative disposition. He does try at the end to come up and anyway, I hope you're doing good. And he tries to come up at the end and be very nice at it when he's writing here. But I can't explain it. It's he's so over. I can't explain it. He's so overweight, and it's from a very, very negative disposition. So actually, some of the things that I think these guys have said, I'm not going to believe. I think that I think my ultimate conclusion is I do believe these guys were abused, but I don't believe they're always telling the truth, and I don't believe they're always nice guys. Now, I'm not qualified to say they might not be nice guys because of their family history. It's not really their fault that they're not nice guys. But this was the clincher for me in terms of, this sounds like genuine abuse. He softens so much. It's still happening. He says, it's not my dad is still abusing me or going into any, greater graphic details. It's just, it's still happening. And that to me is playing it down, and that is keeping it inside. It's talking almost in code that they've obviously had a conversation beforehand, because when he says the phrase "it's still happening," then he expects that to be understood at the other side. If when we got on this live, you went, "How are you?" If I said "it's still happening," you wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about. So there's obviously been more discussions there. So that's kind of my big learns from the lesson. He really minimizes in this letter what's been going on, and I think that would be a hallmark of someone who has been abused, who wants to keep it in, and who, unless he's an absolute criminal mastermind writing a really, really cleverly worded letter before the event. These, make me think, yes, this is someone who has suffered some form of abuse. One of the things and in statement analysis is if someone doesn't say it, you can't assume what they mean. So all I can say is there's been some form of abuse going on there, or some traumatic event that he doesn't want to mention, because it is so downbeat. It is so much written in the negative. So I think something has happened. Exactly what that thing is, I could not tell from this, because he doesn't say the words there.
Well, something that I thought about, and you can let me know your thoughts, but when he wrote, he's so overweight, he can't stand to look at him, or whatever he said. I mean, I guess I personally feel like if my dad was overweight, my dad is not, but if he got overweight, that's not something that I would necessarily write to a family member, that I can't stand to look at him, unless, but let me just, if it was my husband, okay, who I have relations with, let's say, that's something I would say. My husband's getting so big, I can't stand to look at him. It's making me sick when he's trying to do these things to me. That's what kind of for me, gave it away, where it's like you're commenting on your dad's appearance, his weight, and the whole thing makes you sick, but now it makes you really sick.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. How would we talk about our dad's
Yeah.
overweightness? Probably with concern for his health, or certainly for me, that's how I would look on it. It would not be about his attractiveness, or it would not be in that way whatsoever. So again, there's a little bit of leakage there. So he's not come, great spot. He's not come out and said exactly what's happened, but he's talking about his dad in a way that you just would not expect someone to talk about their father.
No, that is what, yeah, that for me, I was just like, it doesn't really add up for me. That's not something I would say as an 18-year-old, I guess, to a family member about, yeah, my father. But the note, knowing what we all know now, I do believe that that is a really solid piece of evidence there, and that, it should be taken into consideration right about now. Or, like I said, 10 years ago when they first, yeah, it was brought to their attention. But yeah, anyway, but okay. So that's the letter. Now, only the first trial is available online. I believe the second trial wasn't recorded, and that's why it's not available. But there is some testimony in the first trial from Lyle about Kitty, and I believe that the testimony Lyle he gave about his father, to me, that was incredibly believable. And we can go over some of that, but his mother, I feel like while I believe it, I was a little confused about it. And I think that the fact that he went and reloaded the gun after they ran out of bullets and he shot his mom in the face, this whole thing is where it's kind of like murder, murder, murder one, you're facing the death penalty. That's where I feel like this is all stemming from. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I want to say something. Sorry.
no, there you go. You know this better than me.
Yeah.
I was only going to say that, interestingly, so I said I don't know much about this trial at all, and it's kind of what I'm aware of is the Menendez brothers and their parents, and it's almost like, actually, when I look into it, very much there are two different Menendez brothers. They are not the same characters. They have not had the same experience either.
Yeah.
I do wonder, and this is just a wonder, what sway I think Lyle had over Erik, in this. There may be I just see
Sure.
Menendez brothers and think they were both in it together, and they were both equally in it together. But analyzing their
Yep.
words, I don't think they were. I think there was a power imbalance between them, and the exact same with the parents. Not so much because I haven't heard from the parents, I haven't heard the parents talk, but how they see their parents. When I compare, I've got some testimony that you gave me from Erik talking about abuse by the father, and
Yep.
some testimony from Lyle talking about abuse by the mother. And the two stories are very, very differently told there as well. And in some other bits I've listened to, the
Yeah.
way they refer to the father and the mother is very, very different. I don't quite know why. I haven't studied in enough detail why, but they do almost. I don't know. This is not a final conclusion, but Dad
Yeah.
was a bad man, and almost like accepted Dad was a bad man. We have almost more resentment because we think Mum might have been a good person, but she did not stand up for us, or she could have been a good person. Dad was beyond redemption. Mum could have had that redemption, but didn't, and there's almost more anger towards her, and more of them trying to justify what happened towards her than towards Dad.
Yeah. I mean, it's what Kitty Menendez did, in my opinion, is unforgivable. Like, to a degree of, if let's say this was now and they were going to be on trial, and Jose was convicted of XYZ, I think she should be convicted of the same. Only because not only did she know about it, she allowed it, she was almost this accomplice, because she would make sure nobody would go down the hallway, nobody would go into the bedroom. And then when a younger cousin told her about this, she shut them up and she got upset with her son. And then you have what they feel or I guess, you know, her depression, the way that Jose treated her, especially in front of the boys. He was awful to her in front of the boys. You know, he would tell her to shut up, that he would treat her poorly. And so this, you know, and this is a thing. I feel like anyone who's not a psychologist or psychiatrist knows this, you know, how the husband treats the wife or vice versa, that, you know, can affect the children. So Kitty was, you know, she did abuse them to a degree with some weirdness and touchy-feely, and she inspected Lyle's penis as a teenager. That's odd. However, I think this is where a lot of questions came in the trial, and people were thinking, well, why go, you know, you went back and you reloaded your gun and you put it point blank in your mother's cheek. That's brutal. That is savage. How do we explain this? How do we justify that in a verdict that, you know, is a not guilty verdict or, you know, manslaughter, whatever? How do we justify that? Because you did this. And so this is where I think all of that testimony is really, really important to understand.
Yeah, I would agree. I think their attitude towards their mum and their dad, they were two very different attitudes. Don't quite know where it comes from or why it came from, but I can spot linguistically that these are just two different attitudes towards their parents.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'll play the testimony of Lyle speaking about Kitty from the first trial. Let me grab that. Oh, you know what? I had up. Let me find it. I was watching Susan Hendricks on Court TV right before this because she went on Vinny last night with a juror actually from trial 1.
Oh,
but, yeah, I know, which is crazy. And she actually shared that the jury was totally.
Our life was one thing.
Sorry, it was split.
Our life was one thing.
All the men
and
wanted
that's where
murder one, and the women
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise.
Want to bring in David?
Now I had it, you guys. Right. Oh, you know what? I sent it to you, didn't I?
You sent it to me, yes.
Yes, I'll go grab it there so I don't waste any more time.
It was very strange watching the clip you sent me because it's not in widescreen. It's from a long time ago, so it's a little tiny box of video rather than that. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Okay, I did not even notice. My
properly
God.
From back in the day.
Yeah. It's gosh, and this is from a YouTube account that I follow. That
how she looked.
Yes.
And sometimes when she asked you how she looked, would she be inappropriately attired?
She would be topless. Usually just topless or like an open robe. And sometimes, you know, with her clothes on.
And what ages are you talking about where she would expose herself to you this way?
Overall. I was about 11.
She help you with your baths?
Yes.
How would she help you with your baths?
She would come in after I'd been in there a while. She would help wash my hair and wash me with a sponge.
How old are you talking about?
Same, 11 to like 11 to 13.
And when you say she would wash you with a sponge, would you just wash your back or?
No, she would wash me everywhere.
She would wash your genitals?
Yes.
You slept in bed with your mom a lot, didn't you, even when you were little?
Yes.
And did you continue to sleep in her bed around this time when you're 11 and 12?
Sometimes.
And sometimes, did you touch your mom?
Yes.
Would your dad be in bed?
Sometimes.
And where would you touch her?
Everywhere.
Did she touch your back?
She kissed me, but she didn't touch me.
And how long did these things go on for?
Until I was 13, a little bit farther than that.
And when this was going on with your mom, was she nicer to you than she used to be?
No, she was worse.
And did it stop at some point?
It stopped a few months after I was 13.
Who stopped it?
I did.
How did she react to that?
She was furious, and you know, she couldn't be too much worse, but she harassed me, and we just sort of had arguments about and problems about that for a long time, a couple of years,
Was your,
really for my whole life, because it came out in other ways too.
your relationship with your mother was never good before that, is that correct?
No.
Was it worse after that?
Oh, yeah, she was.
By the way.
She was pretty much zeroed in on me after that. Very, I don't know, she felt rejected. I don't know what she felt exactly, but it was a constant attacking.
Were you angry? Were you angry with her also?
So angry? I was very angry. I thought that it was unfair.
Why was it unfair?
Because we were doing this and she was enjoying it, and was hoping that things were going to get better for our whole relationship, and things might get better. She got worse.
Did you think she was going to love you if you did these things?
I took it to be love, and that's what I want.
Did you always have problems with her after that about your girlfriends?
I always had problems with her with my girlfriends, yes.
And after all of this stopped with your mother, did she show you specifically that she was unhappy that it had stopped, or she was angry about it?
She harassed me.
What do you mean she harassed you?
She just kept exposing herself, picking me up at the clubs with, in a robe exposed, leaving her underwear around, calling me into the room when she knew that she was, changing, asking me if she looked pretty, and call me a liar when I said yes. Sometimes she would be in a tantrum, and then she'd come over and she would touch my face real gentle, like she was going to kiss me, and then she would go back into a rage. And she was very upset. And I think maybe Diane being in the house later upset her more.
Did she ask you questions about your girlfriends? Did she seem to want to know a lot of personal details about your relationships with your girlfriends?
Well, yes. No, she didn't want to know personal details, but she didn't want anybody from a broken home. And it was just a suspicion. Everybody was a gold digger. Everybody was having affairs or bimbo. Nobody was. She didn't really say what she wanted for me. My dad had an idea of what he wanted. She was just. I only had a couple girlfriends and 2 girlfriends that I had relationships with, but both of them well, 3, because Christy saw 3, and she was very. This really was more than critical. It was just like humiliating who my girlfriends were as people, and.
You mentioned Christy. Christy was a very pretty model. Is that right?
She was pretty.
And was she nice?
Yeah, she was like an angel. And
did your mom like her?
My mom just despised her.
And did your mom call her names?
Sustain.
This is 1989, the spring.
Is that a question?
It's the spring 1989. It's the time.
It was.
Yes. And what names did she call her?
She called her the same names that my dad did. My dad didn't like Christy either. He called her a slut and a bimbo and a gold digger and just a country girl. She had come in from out of state. She was from the Midwest, and she came here to be a model.
Did your mom do something about the plates that you ate off of?
Well, she thought she was AIDS infected. And
what was that based on?
That she was a model. And so she wouldn't let me eat at the table. So I ate on paper plates in the den. And she wouldn't, I remember I let Christy go in the kitchen one time when my mom wasn't there. And my brother actually allowed her in the kitchen. I was playing tennis. And my mom found out. And they were furious over the phone. And then she came home and she boiled all the silverware, everything in the kitchen. Told me she'd never be allowed in her house again. And the relationship ended shortly after that.
Would she
Okay.
ask?
So let me just remove that. Okay. That was to me, that was kind of fascinating, to be honest. Sad, but fascinating.
Yeah, so there's lots to that. So let me do the reassuring things first of all.
Okay.
If you notice that, if you could really break that part up there into two parts. One talking about the actual abuse when he was close to his mother and abuse was happening, and then there's a second part where he was talking about post abuse when he'd stopped it. And he's very terse when he's talking about abuse. He's very, very nailed down in what he says. It's one word answers at times. And it's certainly not very descriptive. It's not very illuminating as to what happened. And then when we get away from that, and we are talking about how she treated him post that when he decided to stop it, and also what she said about his girlfriends, he becomes a lot more free-flowing, a lot more volunteering of information, a lot longer sentences in his answers. I don't quite know if you can see my paper there, that this is what you sent me, but
Okay.
that's the question and answers about abuse. You can see it's very short there, and then that part there, that very long paragraph, is him describing some of his mum's behavior post that, and it's you know, it's 2 paragraphs long. Nothing is 2 paragraphs long until he starts talking about that. So there's definitely some nailing himself down while he's talking about the abuse. I'll come back to that in a second. The other thing, which is again for me a tell that abuse possibly was happening, was he talks about the bath. Now, it is brought up by the lawyer, first of all, did she come to you in the bath? But obviously this has come from him. You know, this is prepared as to how this story has come out. But also, when Erik is talking about some abuse from his dad, he says he went for a bath afterwards. Now, linguistically, when I'm talking about consensual sex here, quite often the unclean words come into play in a good way. We talk about things being filthy or dirty, and we linguistically associate sex with an uncleanliness in words at times, and in a lot of cases around abuse, I know there physically is, you know, people who have been abused feel like they need to take a bath to clean themselves afterwards, and very much that is that comes out in the language there. So he does talk about baths, and also Erik is talking about baths in the other one. So that to me was a sign that abuse may well have been present. What I do think though is that his and don't get me wrong, this is obviously someone being very emotional when they're testifying, but I do think that there is an element of vagueness in his testimony around the abuse, not hiding, not avoiding something, but I do wonder, and there could be very good reasons for this, but how much of that was storytelling? That potentially to protect himself, he has got some things that he wants to say. He wants to say that I was abused, but he doesn't really want to go into the detail of it or so on. And that may be why I pick up some storytelling and asking, did this really happen as he said it happened? For example, when he's asked, would she be dressed inappropriately? And he says, she would be topless, usually. So there's a bit of a qualifier there, usually, or like an open robe, and sometimes with her clothes on. So that's very vague as to how was she attired. If you actually look at the precise words, we can get a picture that he led with topless, but that actually was kind of usually, so that's not all the time. An open robe, I don't quite know what that means. You know, it's again kind of vague. And sometimes with their clothes on. So I don't know exactly what it was he was trying to get across there. Understandable he's vague when it's would she wash you? She would wash me everywhere, and he doesn't get into any deep down specifics with that one. But again, vague there. Interestingly, when I first did notice this, it's she would help wash my hair. So the word help suggests that there was some both of them involved at that time. Do you know what I mean? You know, like it was not necessarily consensual, but it was helping me to wash my hair. It wasn't she would wash my hair. there, which I've since learned that it was a very complex relationship, or a very extremely complexly described there. Would your dad be in the bed? Sometimes. He doesn't quite expand on that either, in a way that he did when he was talking about how mom treated him afterwards, or mom treated girlfriends.
Right.
And then again, and I don't want to slam this guy too badly, but he is asked when this was going on, so when this abuse was happening, was your mom nicer? And he says, no, she was worse. So he said she was worse when the abuse was happening, but then he says she was worse when it stopped. Now, the two things can't be true. So I didn't get a picture there of what it was that he was talking about. Ultimately, it just seemed like mom was pretty hellish. She may well have just been really bad all the time. But I think that, again, that gave me an element of storytelling around the abuse here. I'm not saying it didn't happen. What I'm saying is I don't think it happened exactly like he described it there.
And that is absolutely possible. Oh, I hate when I say absolutely in front of you. It's so annoying. You've made me so paranoid and I realize how often I say it, but
Lauren doesn't believe me. She's just let it go.
No, because what I believe, and by the way, I didn't catch when he said, no, it was worse after. I believed that because I was just like, that makes sense, because she seemed like she had so many issues mentally that I was like, ooh, I believe that. So I didn't actually catch when he said it was worse when it stopped. Totally went over my head. But what I'll say is, I think you're right. He was super vague with a lot of this, and the attorney, which was his attorney, she was asking incredibly leading questions. That's her job, right? To do that. So I think maybe he felt like he was so ashamed, as we discussed, he did not want to say this in the first place. So in my opinion, he left this to his attorney. You say it, I'll agree. I'll give you, the bare minimum here, because I don't want to freaking talk about it. And at some point they're like, all right, guys, your life is on the line. You're going to have to discuss this. And so he's like, okay, fine. So that's what I gather. But
yeah, don't forget, when you're on trial, or even if you're a witness in a court case, it can all be about the show. This is, we're kidding ourselves if we believe that people are getting up on trial for their life and they haven't gone through what it is they're going to say, and they haven't rehearsed what they're going to say, and most importantly, what they're not going to say as well, that's going to cause them any issues there. So that's, all those things are possible. And so it could very much be possible that, yes, abuse did happen, but no, that story is not exactly a true representation of what happened. For whatever reason, he does not want to say that. I'm not a magic sorcerer. I cannot work out what that reason is. But it could be shame. It could be denial. It could be embarrassment. Or it could be, I've got a finely worked out story that I need to convey because my life depends on it. And, if your life depends on it, that's when you're going to be very careful about what you say.
Yes. And just jumping around a little bit, because I didn't do this at the beginning, which is what I should have done, but I had sent you something and I just want to read it to the chat. This was at the beginning of Robert Rand's book. He is a journalist who covered the case from the beginning, and he's still covering it. And this was when, the police thought that the mafia was involved, and who knew what was really going on. So this was a statement made to Robert Rand. I believe it said, okay, this happened in a few months after the murders. He said this to Robert Rand, quote, I think that, this is Erik, I think that possibly if Lyle and I would have been home, if we would have been able to do something about it, maybe my dad would be alive. Maybe I'd be dead. He's back. Okay. Let me add him back. Sorry. Wow. I just clicked another link and then I got so turned around. Sorry, guys. Okay, you're back.
I'm back.
Let me go back to this. So it said, if we would have been home, we would have been able to do something about it. Maybe my dad would be alive. Maybe I'd be dead. You know, I mean, I don't know. I wish. I definitely would give my life for my dad's. End quote.
Wow.
Clearly bullshit, right? I mean, like, how many times does he say, I don't know? He stutters, possibly, definitely. You tell me.
I mean, yeah, we've got the vagueness there. Possibly would have, if we would have been able, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, lots of vagary there. You
Yeah.
captured it beautifully. The stutter on the I. So I. When we say I, we're joining ourselves to the concept that comes next. And when we're lying, that can be quite hard to do, because even if you are a killer, lying is just, it's not something that comes naturally to us. We want to avoid lying at all costs. So it's like, do I really want to say this? I wish. The giveaway for me was, I definitely would give my life for my dad's, which is in the present tense. So at the time he said that, his dad was dead. So he could, unless there's some things going on in this universe I don't know about, he could not do it at that time. If he'd said, I definitely would have given my life for my dad's, I would have had more credibility on that statement there. He's saying, yeah, I would have given my life for my dad's, but he says give in the present tense when he knows that is not possible anymore. That's not going to happen. So that would have made me go, yeah, bull.
Wow, that I didn't even catch that. And I thought, I was like, oh, I nailed this letter. I don't need any help. I didn't catch that at all. Oh my gosh. This is an interesting comment. I just happened to look over at the chat. And sorry, chat, I'm doing a horrible job today of managing both because I'm so fixated on this. But oh, yeah, that's so interesting. Like autism vibes, I never really thought about, but I would hope that somebody would have diagnose that at some point, but I could see where you're coming from for sure. Let me go back. Okay. So let's go to, and this is not on video, but we can read parts of it if you don't mind, Jack.
Yeah.
Erik's testimony from the second trial. And Erik was not as strong of a witness as Lyle. This is pretty well documented. He was also very hesitant. He was described as a quote unquote basket case, about all of this. And he also didn't really want to testify, but he did anyway because their lives are on the line. So let's get to that. So I will read it. Should I read it, or
you can? Yeah, you read. I'll interrupt. There, that seems like a great deal.
Okay, you go and you interrupt. Let me pull that back up because I just lost my freaking Okay, here we go. All right. Question. Well, I guess I'll say question. Do you recall the first time that your father sodomized you? Answer. Yes. Question. Tell the jury what happened. Answer. My father came into my room. I was home alone with him. He put a slate underneath the door. He closed the blinds and told me to take off my clothes and bend over the footboard, and I did so. Question. First of all, you mentioned the slate. What do you mean by a slate? Answer. There was a wooden board that I had under my bed, and one was kept behind the door, and he would put it underneath the door to the floor, and it would jam the door closed. Question. Underneath the door handle to the floor? Answer. Yes. Question. He would tell you to do that? Answer. No, he would do it himself. Question. What kind of sled or slate was this? Answer. A wooden one. Question. What happened after you barricaded the door? Answer. I didn't barricade the door. Question. What happened after your father barricaded the door? Answer. He got undressed and he got on the bed. Answer. Oh, that was the answer. Sorry. Question. What happened then? Answer. He put the Vaseline he had brought into the room on me and on him, and he entered me.
Right. There's a good time to take a pause.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you.
So very much like the testimony from Lyle, I got some issues with this. Now, first of all, I will say it's all in the past tense. Very often people, when they're lying about past events, will say things in the present tense because they're making it up now in their head. But also, people who have suffered traumatic abuse may talk in the present tense because as they recount what has happened, the feelings they're feeling what they felt then. They're feeling that now as they talk about it, and they can talk in the present tense. We've got to be careful when we hear people who have suffered from abuse talk in the present tense. But there's just a few things here that are out of time. So he says, my father came into my room. I was home alone with him. Now, being home alone came before the father coming into the room. So he's very often in deceptive stories, people have to go backwards in time to make what they're about to say make a bit more sense because they've forgotten to add in a detail that came first. Now, that being out of time is not proof that he's lying here, but it's just a little tell that potentially something is here. So my father came into my room. I was home alone with him. In logical and chronological order, it would be I was home alone. Just me and my dad were in the house, and he came into my room. So that made me go, what?
Got it.
Yeah. What I did notice, and I've listened to, because you hooked me into this trial, so I've listened to a bit more testimony.
Yeah.
My God, they do not like, or maybe it is just Erik, like words being put in their mouth. So what happened after you barricaded the door? I didn't barricade the door. Now that's truthful. I'm not having a go at that.
Yeah.
But very often, we do it all the time. Maybe not when we're on trial for murder, but we do it all the time where someone says something, you go, it's not quite what happened, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a thing. So, you know, or we'll pick it up. Well, after he barricaded the door, this is what happened. But instead, he just goes blank outright. I didn't barricade the door. And then once more, well, then we've got, and you know, this is, I don't really want you to have to picture this, but you may have to picture this, is that he said that when his dad came in, he told him to undress and bend over the footboard of the bed. And then he says his father got undressed and got on the bed. Now, logistically, that doesn't make sense as to what comes next. They're out of position for the movement that comes next, because if he's still bending over the bed and his dad is on the bed, then what comes next couldn't have happened without some movement happening.
Whatever.
There, which could be true. That you could have just skipped part of the story out, but there is a jump in time there that some things happened. And then
Jack, I want to interrupt you really quick so people can understand that you said this at the beginning. We believe them, right? We are on this same page. We believe them. You are just analyzing words and statements, and that is what your job is. Your job is not to analyze anything else. So I just don't want anyone. We believe them, and
and every stage I'm going through here, nothing is proof, or I'm not saying this is proof this didn't happen. What I am saying is, when I go through both these testimonies, I build up a few data points that say to me, did this happen like they said? And there are many reasons for that are not all about they are fabricating the abuse. And then just finally at the end of that, we've got another part out of time, which he put the Vaseline he had brought into the room on me. And again, the Vaseline has kind of appeared from nowhere, and it's out of time again. He has to say how it got there, which is interesting because actually he could have just said he put some Vaseline on me and him. So he seems to feel the need to go back and fill in a bit of information that when his dad arrived, he had the Vaseline there. I'm not saying it didn't. None of these things happened. It is very graphic and very on. Some of the other bits are very on form for how these stories go. But again, I just wonder if this is a little bit constructed in order to get their message across.
And at this point, I mean, Jack, this had happened. God, by the point of the second trial, it's like 1995 or something like that. I mean, it had been a long time. And yeah, they had already said this in the first trial. They had gone over this with their attorneys XYZ many times. I'm sure by this point they were like, God, I don't freaking know. Like, do you have to act like, why do I have to keep talking about this? They're probably so over it that they're just like, I don't remember how this happened. I just know it happened. And that is, I've thought of that a few different times. Like, you tell a story. It's even like doing media hits or going on podcasts. You feel kind of bad. You're like, I feel like I've been talking about this forever. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just talking.
Yeah, if anyone works in sales, then the first time you go out and try and sell your product, you will bumble around the story behind it or what problems it solves, in the hope of making a sale. But the 100th time you go out and do that, your words are slick. You've worked out the bits to cut out that don't need to be said. You're probably doing it from a sort of muscle memory part of your brain rather than from a this is all the things that I need to say part of your brain as well. And that could be what is happening here as well.
Yeah. And so I did have a question about the second half of this, and I'll read it. But my question, I guess, is when someone is asking someone to recollect something that happened to them and they say, what did you say? And they answer what they said in present tense, that wouldn't necessarily indicate deception all the time because they're looking back saying, this is what I said, right?
Exactly that. I hear that all the time where present tense about past events makes me go, whoa. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's what did you say? So actually the answer to the truthful answer to what did you say would be in the present tense. You wouldn't talk in the past tense there. So yeah, present tense in that situation, fine.
Okay, so then I'll get to that part really quick. This is graphic, you guys, but I just said, yep, and I ended with, he entered me. Question, and did it hurt? Answer, oh, yes. Question, did you cry out in pain? Answer, yes. Question, how did it hurt? Answer, needles and cutting me open felt like I was being torn in two. Question, what did you want your father to do? Answer, I asked him to stop. Question, how did you ask him to stop? Answer, I said, please, Daddy, you're hurting me. Please stop. Question, did you think your father wanted to hurt you? Answer, I wasn't sure anymore. Question, did your father stop? Answer, no. Question, what did he do? Answer, continued. Question, and did this happen on more than one occasion where he would sodomize you and it would hurt and you would tell him to stop? Answer, no. Question, was there a reason why it didn't happen on more than one occasion? Answer, yes. Question, why? Answer, because after this occasion, my father told me why he had continued, and I vowed when I was in the bathtub afterwards never to resist, never to fight, never to cry out. Question, why did your father tell you that he continued? Answer, he told me because that I had been screaming and crying and had been pleading with him to stop. Question, when he continued, did he hurt you more? Answer, I assume he did. I don't remember it afterwards. I remember the pain. I remember him going into me. I remember the agony of the feeling, and I remember leaving my mind. And I don't remember anything more about it until afterwards when he put a towel down on my bed. That's the end of that.
So I've been kind of nitpicking a bit around this testimony, but the first part you read out there, did it hurt? Oh, yes. Did you cry out in pain? Yes. Really straightforward, very, very quick answers. Nothing extra added in there, nothing to try and convince us, nothing to distract us or move us away. Just very straightforward answers. The two things there that just so you pointed out the present tense. So did you ask him to stop? I said, please, Daddy, you're hurting me. Please stop. That is in the present tense. That's absolutely fine because that is the words that he used at that time. I did notice it's what did you want your father to do? And instead of saying what he wanted his father to do, he says what he asked him to do. I asked him to stop. So there's some dissonance there. Not entirely sure what it is. And then on that very last question, when he continued, did he hurt you more? And he says, I assume he did. I don't remember it. And then he's saying, I assume he hurt me. I don't remember. But then he says he does remember pain. I remember the pain. I remember the agony. So there's, again, that just doesn't quite match up to what was being said there. I take the truthful. I remember the pain. I remember the agony. I don't have any reason to doubt that he does remember pain and he does remember agony. This is so straightforward. There's no convincing us. There's nothing there that makes me think he's telling a pure story about this that I really I don't believe. But it is interesting. I wonder there, and maybe this is a clue as to what is going on. He says he doesn't remember. Now, is that just a defense mechanism? Does he remember everything? But it's easier for him to say, I don't really remember, i.e. I'm not going to go into this any deeper. It's going to, this is painful enough. It's going to be too painful to go further. I wonder if that is what's going on there. And this, he says he doesn't remember, and then he says he does remember the pain. So I do wonder if that is at the heart of why some of this feels a little bit like deceptive. Have they developed stories that they want to tell that they feel convey the truth of what's happened, but then they're not always going to hang up against the test of, was this 100% truthful story, or is it an amalgamation of things that had happened that you want to get across to the jury?
Yeah, and something he said, I feel like I've heard a lot when it comes to survivors and victims, where he said he kind of left his body, or I don't remember exactly what he said, but he did say something along those lines, which in my opinion checked out, because it's like, you remember the pain, you remember the agony, you don't remember all the details, because the only way to deal with this is to leave your body, act like you're not there, and this is not happening to you. So that, again, in my opinion, made it pretty believable. But I just feel like we talked about, there are so many factors to weigh here with their testimony, especially years later for the second trial. I just, and I know at this point, the way that they were feeling about their situation, about their case, and just, everything there, they were feeling grim. They were not feeling good. Lyle couldn't even testify in the second trial, So,
yeah,
sorry.
That was, I was only going to say, the other interesting thing for me is the difference between those two bits of testimony about Lyle talking about his mother and Erik talking about his father, and that the description of what happened with Erik is there's much more to it. There are elements there, like you spoke about, that resonated with you. It was the phrase he says, "I remember leaving my mind," which, yes, I have heard many times from people that have suffered some sort of, especially physical, intimate trauma, is switch off. Just this will be over at some point, and I'm going to switch off now. Exactly. Whereas in Lyle's, it was a bit more vague. It was sometimes this would happen, usually this would happen, sometimes this would happen. And again, that's why I think that there is this two very different approaches that they take towards their father and their mother. They're very different stories they tell.
Yeah, and one of my favorite phrases is, multiple things can be true, in the sense that Lyle could have been, as a teenager, a spoiled asshole. He could have been, but that doesn't mean that he did not get abused, as a child, and that did not mean that their father did not torment them. God, why do you get in my head with this? Absolutely. I mean, if I could just remove that word from my freaking vocabulary. But yeah, something else I wanted to ask you is, I watched it was an interview with Erik Menendez and his wife, and this maybe was very early 2000s, and it was with Larry King, and Erik's on the phone, and Larry King says, "Erik, do you regret what you did?" And Erik said, "Immensely so, immensely so." He said those two words twice. What do you make of that?
It's a really small data point. It could be true. He regrets immensely what he did, and he's saying, he's had a lot of time to think about it, and he has immense regret. It could also be that he doesn't just want to say, yes, I regret it, because that would be, in a liar's mind, that's just weak. That's just saying, yeah, I regret it. So a liar thinks they have to over-egg the pudding, put all these persuasive words in. So yes, I regret it immensely. I don't just regret it, I regret it immensely. It's too small a data point to kind of say that's a lie or I think that's the truth. The two things are very, very possible there.
Yeah, I took that actually as truth because of what you said. I feel like if you're put on the spot like that, if that was me and I just spent years trying to convince people that, you know, I went through what I went through and I had my reasons to do this, I feel like I would be like, of course I regret it. Look, you know, and I would go crazy. So I was super impressed that he was just like, you know, immensely so.
Well, I had a unique opportunity this week to statement analyze myself. I won't go into all the details. I was accused of a crime this week, and I said no, and I walked away going, "Oh, how were my words there? Was I believable?"
Yeah.
And the phrase I used was, "I didn't steal anything. I'm leaving." Right. So it wasn't, "You've got to believe me. Honestly, I didn't steal anything. I'm out of here." Or, you know, I truly didn't steal anything. I realized I didn't steal anything. I'm leaving. And it was very, very terse and to the point. There was no extra language or convincing or persuasive language in there. And I was like, oh God, I passed my own test. And by the way, I didn't steal anything.
Wait, what did they accuse you of stealing of? Now you have to tell me. This is
I don't know. I went into a store. I was looking for a specific item. That one of those items that you're not quite sure which section it's in. So I was walking up and down all the various options, and the various options were at either end of the store. So I was walking, and then I did the sort of me thing, which is, did I miss it the first time? So went back, walked out, and apparently I've been caught on camera as acting suspicious because I was, you know, I mean, what is more suspicious than walking into a store and looking for something? And I was asked, "Can I see inside your bag?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Well, control room have said that we should be out looking inside your bag." I went, "Did they see me steal anything?" They went, "They've asked me to take you to the office." I went, "I haven't stolen anything. I'm not coming," and I'm off. Yeah.
What kind of store is this? A drugstore? Is this a department store? I'm so confused at why they're so serious about this.
It's it's what we it's a variety store is what we call it here.
The murder aisle. I mean,
if I tell Charlotte it's a B&M, she'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
A B&M?
A B&M, yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. It's a Scotland thing?
No, it's a British thing.
Oh, a British thing. Okay.
Kind of say very, very fine stores as well. I'm a big, big fan of them, but not that particular security guard.
I have to tell you, in New York City, in Manhattan, like I don't even know how to say this. Like, they actually watch the people loot and they say, "Okay, guys, that's enough. That's enough." And I'm like, why do I have to pay when they just took I don't understand this. This is so insane. And you're just walking up and down the stores and they're like, "Sir, come with me." Like,
oh, okay. Next time I'll give that one a try at my local B&M and see how well it goes. Could I just do another thing that I got from the Menendez trial?
Please.
Now, I can't tell one brother from the other because I've not been as deeply immersed as you, but I think this is Lyle. And it was asked, "Did you kill your father to get back at him for what you said he did to you when you were a child sexually?" And he said, "No, I killed him because we were afraid and cause of what was going on that weekend." Right now, number one, that's really vague. What was going on that weekend? And it's not afraid for my life or anything like that. But note the pronouns. I killed him because we were afraid. Okay. Then he's asked, "Why is it that you lied to the police? Why did you tell them? Why did you decide not to tell them you were involved?" He says, "Well, when they didn't show up, my brother and I decided that if it was possible, we didn't want to have to explain what happened. I didn't think, we had just shot our parents and we didn't want to go to jail." So twice there, he takes sole responsibility. Now, first one was for the father, but the other one was for the killing. The second time, he corrects himself. Now, when someone corrects themselves, I tend to go with the first thing they say rather than the second thing they say. Why have they decided that first thing shouldn't stand? I am going to say the second thing. The first thing we say is normally what comes out of our mind. It's the train of thought that we are on. We had just shot our parents and we didn't want to go to jail. And that I listened to little bits of testimony around what happened that night. And I think there was some big disunity between the brothers that night. I think there was I guess the people, what the hell have you done? Or we can't do that, like thinking fast and thinking loud. But I
Right.
got the impression they were not properly unified that night. There may well have been a leader and a follower, or an instigator and okay, I might as well join in brother involved there. I don't think
Yeah.
this was, in my head, this was the Menendez brothers acting together. Might not have been. I think one of them, potentially Lyle, was way more involved and instigatory. Instigatory, that is not a word. I
Yeah.
should
No,
not have
you
done
know
that.
what?
But
We'll go with that. And
yeah,
and
the other.
I agree with you. I do think that Lyle, he had a much different personality than Erik. He was much more of a leader. Erik was much more of a follower. And I also agree with you in the sense that I never necessarily believed that their lives were in danger that night. They thought, they had said, "Oh, we went on this fishing trip, this fishing boat, and we thought our parents were conspiring to kill us later. So we thought that, we had to go ahead and do it." I don't necessarily believe that. So I think you're right. I think there was some kind of disconnect, and their alibi got all twisted that night as well. However, Erik has fully admitted to being 100% on board. He has had so many years to flip, free himself, right? And blame this all on his brother. And he hasn't done that. And so either he is, and by the way, he and Lyle are in different prisons. They don't even talk. At one point during an early 2000s documentary, Erik had said, "I have not spoken to my brother in literally 10 years. So I believe Erik was on board. It most likely was Lyle's idea, and there totally was disconnect, but they both played a part. 100%, they both did it, but their alibi was screwy. And yeah, I'm sure Lyle probably pushed it, but Erik, in no way, shape, or form, has ever pinned this on Lyle and said, Lyle forced me. Lyle forced me. I mean, if anything, Lyle was so upset upon hearing that Erik was being abused that he was like, "We cannot live like this anymore," especially knowing now that Erik was supposed to go off to UCLA. He was going to get away from his father. And by the way, if he went off to UCLA, I feel like, the killings may not have happened because Erik wouldn't have been home to deal with this. So I hear what you're saying. I hear it all.
Another thing for me, sometimes what is most revealing in looking at someone's statements is what is not there. And there is no sense whatsoever in anything I've heard of money that I saw. I've looked up onto it, and there's a lot of theories of they just killed them to get the money, to live on the riches and so on. And there is not even in parts, quite often, if someone's money obsessed, it comes through a hell of a lot when someone's talking, and there's nothing at all in anything they say that references money or alludes to money or anything like that. So that money one is out the window. I also think the fear of their lives at that moment in time is not true either.
I agree with that.
Um, rightly or wrongly, I'm sure there's a whole load of moral conversations that could be had. It was anger, and a lot of built up resentment around the abuse that these guys suffered.
I am so in agreement with you on that. I agree with you 100%. I really had a hard time with that, them thinking that their lives were in danger that night. I think they had just had it. And I do feel like, of course you can. I don't know if maybe he thought, or his lawyer didn't want him to say, "Yeah, I killed my dad because of the abuse." I would be like, "Yeah, isn't that a good enough reason? My dad sodomized me. Are you like, I couldn't escape. Are you okay with that?" I just scared him off. Oh my gosh, I just scared him off. I feel like it's when my neck starts to go like this is when he kind of falls off the screen. My bobblehead neck. Here he is. I said I scared you. I got in your face.
I do not want to tell you the word you said just as it cut out. I thought that
What did I say? I don't even want to know. What did I say?
it was the S word that we've been using a couple of times because it came up in testimony. I just heard that and then clip. I was like, I've got a Puritan browser.
Yeah. No, this has been really helpful, really eye-opening, I think. Is there anything that we missed that I didn't get to that I sent you?
The only thing which is maybe a bit long to go into now was the statement that Erik released, which I love. I found Erik's statement on Lyle's Facebook page. Who knew they could have a Facebook page when you're in prison?
Oh, it's family members that run that. But he said that he's popped on before. I follow that page like very closely. It's very interesting. But do you want to just sum it up? So guys, while you sum this up, guys, so you don't have to read it through, I will find this statement and put a link in the notes if you want to just go quickly.
It is, and it's where a lot of people go. But this is the statement is a bit manipulative, and they are saying that they're making this stand not just because it's about the Netflix drama that's out about them at the moment, and they don't agree with it. And they say they're making a stand for males that have suffered abuse at the hands of males, and that is very often when someone gives this. I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for everyone else, I'm doing it for the good of society. And look, if we're not going to get a break because we're the Menendez brothers, think of everyone else. I think in this, they are, or Erik is just hacked off about his portrayal in this program. And he's not, he's gone beyond saying, think about what this does to me, or think about what this, how this makes me feel, or makes my family feel, or how I'm portrayed unfairly. He's talking about this is against all victims of abuse, which is manipulative language. I'm not saying he's like trying to make us think that something is false is true, but what he's trying to do is get everyone on his side by doing that. And I don't know, but have they campaigned long for male survivors of male abuse, or is this just something that's come out at the moment? Because that would be a great thing for these guys to do, frankly.
Well, Erik runs a support group for sexually abused men in prison, so I do know that. And then the other thing I'll say about that, and why I so hear what you're saying, the show, I watched it. It did have this weird, I don't know how to say it. It was almost glamorizing this abuse in like a homoerotic way. It was like sensationalizing the grooming, if you will. And I'm probably not saying this in the best way, but I hear what he's saying. Oh, I lost him again. Just for the chat, I hear that he thought that it was being sensationalized, basically, and that all people that have experienced this abuse, or anyone that's experienced this type of abuse, might be like, ew, that's not really how it is. Like you're pairing these fun 90s, 80s music with, two very good looking boys. And, and it seemed odd. It seemed strange. That's all. So
I'll skip that. Just going back to the very beginning of this, I think one of the things that I really value from you in this has been the context. So actually, in the context of knowing that if he does run a support group for males who've suffered abuse, then potentially this is less manipulative, or maybe not even manipulative at all, in light of the fact that he has a lot of experience of that, and maybe feels passionately and very strongly about that and about getting that message across. So thank you for that.
You are so welcome. Like I said, I have become immersed in this case, just like Charlotte. I binged Robert Rand's book. I'm trying to get all of the facts here, and while I 100% see the other side of why people think they should remain in prison, and I think that has a lot to do with Kitty and reloading the gun, and the fact that maybe people are like, well, they were 18 and 21. Why not leave? It's not that easy. I mean, Erik wanted to leave. He thought he was going to, but he had to listen to his father. So, yeah.
Well, look, I always like, part of why I do this is to pass on tips that people can take with them. But I think the best one that's come from this is you saying two things can be true at once. These guys can have suffered horrendous abuse. I may not always be honest, or may not be nice guys. We don't just have to have one singular truth that runs all the way through that. We can have all sorts of shades of gray and all sorts of opposing things going on with them. And I think that, especially if you're a true crime fan, I think realizing that two things can be true at once and almost feeling like they are opposing things. So just because someone's a victim of abuse doesn't mean they're always a nice person or act in a nice way. Just the same way as the vice versa is true. Two things can be true at once.
Yeah, I say that probably way too often. I literally say it all the time, probably multiple times a day. I mean, and like people in the live or that listen to my podcast, they know it's just one of my favorite phrases, I guess, because it just doesn't mean like, I mean, what I heard today, I was doing an interview with this NBA player, John Sally, or former NBA. And of course I couldn't help it. I asked him about Diddy, and he goes in this whole thing and he's like, he's done so much for the Black community and he's given, and I'm like, yeah, and that's awesome. I'm so glad he did that. But he also allegedly did this, and I believe that too. I believe it all. I believe everything. So,
Well,
God.
we've got, I'm digressing here, but I'm bringing you into a lot of British culture. We've had a spate of celebrity scandals over here. And one thing that they have, I mean, this is over maybe the past decade. And one thing a lot of them have in common is that the very worst abusers and one of our very worst people ever in the country was famed for his charity work. You know, a best friend of the royal family because of his charity work, knighted, all sorts of titles.
What was this guy's name with Russell Brand? What was his name?
Jimmy Savile, this is.
Yes, Savile. He's dead though, right? He was like
yes,
the
he
most
is dead.
prolific pedophile. Like
yeah, completely.
Yeah,
but as I was growing up as a kid, he was known as this massive charity guy, always running marathons for charity, always raising money, always out there. And it was a front, it was a cover.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Charlotte.
Oh my gosh. And you're right. It's like, cool. Thanks, Jimmy. You also diddled little kids, you sick fuck. Excuse my language. I'm so sorry. But I literally, I've been saying the F word today because I've been talking about, my last interview was about the Menendez brothers and the child abuse. It gets me. And I'm so sorry, Mom, if you're watching or listening, for saying the F word. Gosh. But yeah, people will, it's like, when will people learn that just because you gave money to charity doesn't mean you didn't do these awful, unspeakable things? It doesn't excuse you.
Entirely possible that Diddy is the greatest philanthropist of all time, has rescued thousands of kids from the ghetto and given them a leg up and given them a great future, and is a horrible abuser. The two things can coexist. In fact, one might be the reason for the other.
That is such a great point. You have such guilt inside about what you do, and not to bring up all these other cases, but it's like Carly Gregg, the 14-year-old, or now she's 15, who shot her mom. You know, she covered up her mom's face after shooting her in the face. It's almost like, you know what you're doing. You feel some sort of guilt, so you act in a different way after, right?
I'm reading a book, you know, the Mindhunter Netflix series.
I love that show. Yeah.
Right. I'm reading the book that was based on by the guy who set up the behavioral profile analysis profiling at the FBI. And there's an entire chapter that would make that covering the head afterwards make a lot of sense.
Really?
Yeah. It's a fascinating book. Fascinating.
Wow. I'll have to get it. What was that guy's name again? I forget.
Something Douglas, Jim Douglas, John Douglas. I think John Douglas. Yes.
Thank you, Afton. Yeah. That's so, yeah, I have to, it's been so long since I've watched that show. I'll have to get the book. Now I want to read it. Now you have me all.
Oh, dude, it's fast. And funnily enough, most of it's set in the time when the Menendez brothers were really in the news, because it's from the 70s, 80s, early 90s.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, the last thing I'll say about them, it's like, and going back to, let's say Carly Gregg, and you've got Carly Gregg, the Menendez brothers, they both killed their parents. If Carly Gregg is on the street, I'm a little scared. I think she's psychotic. I think she might be psychotic and evil. I don't want to coexist with her when she's free. Menendez brothers, I'm not scared of them. I don't think they're going to blow my brain out on, my brains out on the street. Sorry, that was graphic, but just saying, I don't think they're a threat or a danger to society. And so I think it's time. I think it's time that they're released. Just going to say it. Free Erik and Lyle. But just so everyone knows, there is another documentary coming out Monday, October 7th, and that Erik and Lyle have said that they are on board with. They've are a part of this. So I assume it's going to be pretty good, pretty juicy.
Oh, send me the transcripts.
I will. I know. So we'll have to do a follow-up on this. And God, it's an hour and 15 minutes. I could keep going, but I know we all have work to do. So Jack Fox, as always, thank you so much. Chat, I love you all. This is
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I learned a lot. So I will be hitting you up soon. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.